Pastor.
Oh, worst was our slides. Remember our slides? Made out of metal. Remember that? It's 100 degrees outside. You're in your shorts. I'm not talking Nike shorts. I'm talking those cut-off jean shorts with the pockets sticking out of the bottom. 80 feet up. I'm ready. Smoke and sparks flying up out of your crotch. Oh, I'm only halfway down, man. Oh.
When I was little, my brother and I actually got the paddleball game for Christmas. That had to start with some dad. That had to be some dad's idea somewhere in history. I can just hear him, hey, I got an idea. This year, let's give each of the boys a paddle for Christmas. What'd you think? Mom said, give me that. They'll catch on. Here, we'll staple a rubber band with a ball in the middle of it. Now it's a game. My mom could flip us over one leg, blast our rear ends, and keep the ball going.
We got a Wii because I don't want video games where you just sit there. I was like, we're not going to get something where you just sit there. And my oldest son, Coulter, was like, we got to get a Wii because it's active. It's like playing sports. And I was like, really? And he took me to Radio Shack. He put the remote in my hand. We played baseball. You played baseball? You know what I'm talking about? I did not think it would be like you're hitting a ball. Like, he pitched it to me. I saw it go there. And I just went, boom! And I was like, oh, my gosh. Because it was like I hit something. I was like, that is awesome, Coulter. That is, oh, Coulter! Oh.
And that wasn't the worst part. Remember going home, your mom would spray Bactine all over your body? Remember scraping up your knee, roll up your pants leg on, place some Bactine on your leg, blah, 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 it's gonna be better. I don't want you getting gangrene. Come here, let me see your leg, okay. Shh. What was that? That means it's working. That means it's penetrating and killing all that gunk. Stop screaming and thank me. You should thank me for that.
Oh, man, how many of you ever had Bactine sprayed on you? Oh, man. That is just so funny. Oh, man. Somehow we all survived childhood, right? Somehow we all got to the place where we are today. And we're in this series, and we're talking about parenting, and we're really talking about investing in the younger generation. And today, we're going to talk about teenagers. And some of the teenagers are in here today, and don't worry, I got you covered. I got your back. But when it comes to this whole thing about teenagers, if you ever wondered, where did teenagers come from? Have you ever wondered that? I mean, it's like they're children, and then they turn into teenagers, and it's not really human, and then later on they morph back into human, right? I was one too. But what I really mean is, have you ever wondered where the term teenager came from, where the phenomenon of adolescent came from? It's hard to think about it, but it hasn't always been this way. It used to be that you were a kid, and then you were an adult. And for the last many, many decades, we've had this phenomenon called adolescence. Now, in the book, this is a great book, I recommend to all of you, by the way. This is an old copy. The cover's changed. 5 Love Languages of Teenagers. We've done several series here on love languages. This one is specifically written for teenagers. And in the back, there's an appendix, and the author talks about where all this came from. Now, I don't know about you, but this was very enlightening. So I thought that I would just read this little bit of the appendix to you, and so we have a framework for what we're talking about today. And this is what he says. Teenagers are no longer boys and they're no longer girls, but they're not men or women either. Well, that's a pretty accurate description. All the way up until the 1930s, most children aged 13 through 19 had worked for a living on farms, in factories, or at home, whatever their families required of them. They were simply a part of their family of origin and did what was expected of them until they were old enough to marry. And wouldn't you like that today? Until you were old enough to marry. And old enough to marry meant you were old enough to have kids, which is, teenager. There were no teenage movies, music, or fashions because there were no teenagers. The Great Depression of the 1930s changed all that. Jobs evaporated, so work went only to the fathers. Many adolescents, that is, people in their early and mid-teens, hit the road and often ended up begging for food. These runaways or transient youth forced adult society to focus on adolescent problems. This social dilemma led President Franklin Delano Roosevelt to form the National Youth Administration, the NYA. How many of you ever remember hearing about the NYA, maybe in a history book? I'll be honest with you, I don't remember that, okay? So they formed this organization called the NYA, designed to provide training and jobs for America's disillusioned youth. This led to a national focus on high school. In 1900, listen to this, in 1900, only 6% of 17-year-olds earned diplomas from high school. 6%. But it wasn't because they were losers, it was because they had adult responsibilities. By 1939, it was 75%. That's a massive change. This created a social setting for the teens. By 1938, they were called the Bobby Soxers. I've heard of that. And then they were called the Teeners. You ever heard of that? And not me either. Then they were called the Teensters, not to be confused with Teamsters, I guess. In 1941, the term teenagers was born, and obviously has stuck. 1941 is when the term teenagers was coined. That was also the 1941. What started in 41? World War II. That frame of reference for you on that one. In January, also that was the year my dad was born. So that gives you a frame of reference for me. In January of 1941, Life magazine offered this description of teenagers. They live in this is hilarious, but it was 1941. They live in a jolly world of gangs, games, movies, and music. They speak a curious lingo, adore chocolate milkshakes, wear moccasins everywhere, and drive like bats out of hell. Some things never change. So they're no longer boys and girls, but neither men or women either. So for nearly 70 years now, we've had a target age group in our country that are adults physically, sexually, and mentally, but they're not encouraged or expected to act like adults relationally, socially, or emotionally. And that creates major conflict. You think? So why is this type of message so relevant to us today? Because society has created this no-win situation for parents and teenagers. If you're a teenager, you're born into this no-win situation. If you're a parent and your kids grow up and they don't pass away, you're inheriting this no-win situation. So what are we supposed to do? Well, you better pray a lot. So let's do that now. Father, I thank you for the awesome privilege it is to come in here today and just laugh together and maybe cry together when we start talking about these teenage issues. But God, the reality is, when it comes to raising kids, when it comes to being influential to children and then to teenagers, we need your help. And God, there's no way we can do this on our own. There's no way we can do this without divine guidance. And God, we understand now from just reading this little excerpt that teenage years are pretty much a phenomenon of the last century, but this did not catch you by surprise. You knew this was going to happen, and you knew that we would need help. And God, I thank you that along the way, we can have some fun. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Folks, let me introduce you to Stephen Putnam, a freshman from Palm Coast, Florida.
Tell me how this all started.
It started at the volleyball games back in the beginning of the season. As fun as volleyball games are to watch, they don't draw the same kind of crowds the basketball games do. So there was more opportunity to be more vocal and go crazy. So one day I just felt like dancing, if you even call it dancing.
He's a baritone player in the band. He's also part hype man.
About halfway through the basketball season, People just started looking at the band, expecting something every time they put on Turn Down for What.
What was the reaction the first time you did this? Were people looking at you like you were nuts?
Yes. Yeah, there were people who were kind of confused. Like, what is he doing? Just doing my thing.
He is so good doing his thing.
What's the rest of the band doing when you're dancing?
Trying to avoid getting hit by me.
He is turning into a celebrity right before our very eyes.
Do you think that you might be the most famous person on the UNF campus today?
I hope not. The team deserves the attention. They're the ones that are making it to the tournament.
He has earned the adoration of 2,500 of his classmates here in this building.
Yesterday, it's on national television. What was your phone like?
It's still vibrating. My phone, I can still feel it going off in my pocket. The fact that it got put on national TV, I just think it's funny. I'm just doing my thing and then people like it.
Hey, you're still laughing. So, in case you don't know, this is Stephen Putnam. Hashtag UNF Band Kid.
Band guy. I think.
Band guy.
I don't care.
I've
I'm
never
not on
been.
Twitter.
I've never been hashtagged anything. So.
I'm not on Twitter. I don't know what. I think it's band guy.
Band
but
guy.
The athletic department runs that.
Yeah, I
I'll
hear
let
you.
them take that.
So this is Stephen, my son, who will be 19 next month, and
A
woohoo!
week and a half.
Yeah, a week and a half. Yeah, April 1st. April
I didn't
Fool's
even
Day.
realize that until.
So awesome.
No.
And so I went out on a whim and I said, hey, would you be willing to get up on stage with me just for a few minutes and let's talk about some of the parent teenage stuff. And he graciously said yes after he said no. And I didn't twist his arm. He really said he would. And here's the whole deal. I can say honestly, as a dad, I'm really proud of my son. Now, he's doing all that crazy stuff out there, whatever. He can do whatever he wants to. He's 19. And if you don't have that attitude as a parent, you're going to be in trouble, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Because by the time your kid's that old, they're making their own decisions. They're doing their own thing. So you got to quit trying to control everything. But I'm proud of the character he's displayed through all this madness. And I just want to say that publicly to you. I love you. And but I want to ask him some questions. And I have no idea how he's going to answer this, so I'm putting myself at risk here. And putting my wife at risk.
Your career at risk.
My career, I'm not worried about that. I've done some stupid stuff. All right, so what was it like being a teenager in a pastor's house?
Well, I didn't grow up in a pastor's house and then grow up in another house, so I'm not sure how to answer that exactly. But growing up in a Christian environment, a loving and forgiving environment, and then going to hang out with friends who did not grow up in that environment, or at least maybe like a non-genuine Christian environment. Like they say they're Christians, but that's about it. Right. It's a vastly different environment. Most people didn't know, like my friends that I hang out with, that I was a pastor's kid, and some of them do. People I'm closer to, they know that just being around me. But it was, looking back, I'm really glad that I was raised in a positive, loving, forgiving environment.
That's cool. Yay, good answer. Whew. All right. So as you look back on your teen years, what are some things you think, you mentioned some already, what are some things you think we did right, that we did well as parents?
Well, I think one of the things you guys did well was proportioning freedoms out. As I grew older, you would, gradually increase, the level of freedom and responsibility that I had. Sometimes it was a little awkward. You'd either give too much freedom and then realize, oh no, we shouldn't have done that, and then take a whole lot back, and then that was kind of a killjoy. But I think overall, I think that was one thing you guys did really well.
Well, thank you very much.
I wasn't 14 and running free, and I'm not still under your reign now either. So
the oppressive thumb. Okay, so what are some things we didn't do so well?
I think the biggest thing that stood out to me was that you never had the girlfriend talk with me until I already had one. I was 16, and all of a sudden you were wanting to talk to me about what my intentions were with with going on a date, and I was like, I don't want to talk to you about this. I mean, I think that God is happy with the way I've conducted myself, but I think also the way you just kind of didn't approach that was, not something you want to leave to chance.
Yeah. And for the record, I tried to have that conversation several times when he was younger, and he didn't want to. And so the dynamic is created of, do I force the thing to happen or what? And I would agree with you. I should have probably forced some of it, but
You probably should have forced some of it.
this whole thing is This whole thing is dynamic, and we don't always do it right. And so we have to figure it out as we go, and it doesn't come with a manual or whatever. Okay, that's pretty good. I'll accept your answer there. So how have we effectively or not prepared you for life beyond high school?
Well, I think any parent can raise their kid with a sort of religious background and belief, because kids are easy to I don't want to say fool or dupe, but
Pliable?
yeah, that's about right. But I think instilling a sense of self-confidence in me, and knowing, not just, I say I'm a Christian, but why, and making sure I had the self-confidence to really live it out. I think that's a really, really great thing you guys did.
So you felt like we prepared you to live out your Christian faith while you were in high school?
I do. There are lots of people that I saw growing up through high school, who they said they were a Christian, and they just didn't act like it, or they said they were a Christian, and then they just ceased to believe it in general because of the whole just the incredibly atheistic environment that high school is, and anti-religious environment that it's become. And I think instilling that sense of self-confidence in me and other people who I saw, I think, made it through high school without compromising themselves. I think that's one of the major qualities I've observed that I think people of that in category have in common.
Gotcha. So was there any kind of big shock to you, like you transitioned out of high school to college, you're a freshman at UNF, or did this just kind of go like you thought it would?
No, it kind of went how I thought it would.
Yeah.
It's the people that I associated myself with in high school, at least at the end of my high school career, weren't like crazy party people. And there is crazy partying in college, and there is crazy partying in high school, and but there's also there's the opposite of that. There's people who, when they say they're throwing a pool party, it's actually just relaxing and playing Monopoly.
It actually is just a
not
pool.
Yeah. We're just hanging out. It's not always a party, like a crazy party. So I associate myself with those kinds of people, and there are those kinds of people in college. So it wasn't too big of a change, I don't think.
So it's finding the right people to hang out with.
It's still all about finding the right people.
Okay. Still is. Interesting. All right. Big question.
All right.
If you had a do-over from middle school or high school, you had a do-over, what would you do differently?
I would be less afraid to try out new things, like extracurricular activities. I never tried out.
You don't seem the afraid type now.
Well, I found my thing. I never tried out for the football team because I was scared of getting hit. I never tried out for band because I was scared that the band director would be like, "You suck. You're getting relegated to middle school." And then I finally, joined band my senior year of high school, and I loved it. And now I'm pursuing music as a career. So it goes to show that you shouldn't be afraid of something harmless like giving band or going out for the football team a shot.
I would agree with you. I regret not doing more of that too.
Yeah.
So, all right, just to wrap it up, I'm not sure if you have an answer to this question or not, but there's parents and teenagers out here today, and grandparents and aunts and uncles. Any advice from a 19-year-old?
I don't know that I have an answer for that question.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Here's what I think. Just looking back on my own teen years, if I were to give advice from that perspective, it would be you've got to focus on the relationship. And we'll unpack that a little more in a minute. And it's this: when you're in the middle of the teen years, you're not thinking about your parents like, oh my goodness, I want to be good friends with them when I'm 20 years old. That's not what you're thinking. It's not. And when you're a parent of a teenager or a grandparent of a teenager, you're not thinking, oh, I want to be a good friend with my son or daughter when they're 20 years old. What you're thinking is, how can I survive? That's what you're thinking. But if you can keep a perspective of, at the end of all this, at the end of all the change and the morphing, that you can have a relationship, that helps frame the decision-making that goes on during the teen years. And I can say, at least so far, I feel like I have a great relationship with my son. That's what I think. I knew he was going to say that, but I said it anyway. Hey, would you guys thank Stephen for being brave and coming up here today? Good. Take a look at this.
We have no communication. She's always screaming.
What's your problem?
You don't understand that?
You don't want to go where? Okay,
yeah,
so if I
take
take you out, is it going to be the same thing?
No, it's not. She thinks that that's always having problems. That's not.
Julian, you're going to be in the same school. What's going to be the difference? You tell me. What's going to be the difference?
Classes, easier classes. I try to prove a point, but sometimes it just doesn't work.
I don't know what mom in her right mind is going to do that.
Yeah, like sometimes I do stuff to get her mad. Like I wouldn't come home from school. I just go hang out somewhere.
Just things that go running through my head. She stabbed somewhere, laying in the street, and now that it's cold, somebody has mugged her, taken her coat or whatever. Things like that run through your head. You're too young to be out in the street walking around with Emily or whoever.
Who says you're walking around? We were in the house.
Or whatever, and whoever's house.
I don't know, it's like she thinks that she can't trust me. It's not like I'm gonna go out there and do something stupid. I'm going to the mall and coming right back.
She walks up there in the street and she thinks that she's made out of steel or something, that nothing's gonna happen to her. And that's what gets me upset, that she doesn't understand.
She thinks that everybody who I hang out with is bad, and that I'm gonna end up just like them. It's not true. Because you think I'm gonna go and do something stupid? I'll be dead somewhere. How?
What you mean, how, Jillian? With all the crime that there is out in the street, you don't think anybody could hurt you?
It's not gonna happen to me.
That not to worry, that nothing was gonna happen to her. That's exactly what she told me. But how can you not worry, That's your daughter. You have to worry. I've been out there and I know what it's like. And I try to tell her that, but she thinks I'm trying to keep her from the world. Keep her locked up, she says. You could call me overprotective or whatever you want to call me, but I just don't want to see you like all the other girls out in the street.
What other girls? How is that gonna happen to me?
Jillian, you don't know what could happen to you. You don't know what could happen to you tomorrow or the next 5 minutes from now.
I don't know, it's like because the way she was raised, it's like no guys at all. She couldn't have boyfriends till like 19, 18, like that. And I try to tell her that it can't be like that. And she doesn't understand that. Like I try to talk to her about, like Tony, guys, friends, and she doesn't even bother listening. So you judge anybody without even knowing them.
That's right, Jillian. Anybody that comes into your life right now at the age of 14, that's right, I'm a judge. When have you tried to talk to me about him, Jillian?
There's plenty of time to try to talk to you about guys, and you don't even want to listen.
Okay, and what do I tell you when you try to talk to me about guys? That school comes first. Isn't that what I tell you? Pay attention to school, because school, you got the 9th grade through the 12th grade. Okay, guys, you have a whole lifetime to think about men. That's what I tell you. That's what I tell you.
She's not interested in my social life. Or she just let me go my own way and do what I want to do.
Well, what do you do with that? This video is over 10 years old, and I pulled it out because it just sets the stage so perfectly. What are you supposed to do with this? They're at an impasse, this mom and daughter. How many of you have ever experienced, maybe not that scenario, but you're at an impasse? You, when you were a kid, or now as a parent, you're at this, where do you go? Where is she supposed to go with this? Where is she supposed to go with this? What's she supposed to do? I mean, isn't that what we want to know? I mean, because we get into these scenarios. Well, I can tell you this. unless the mom or the daughter change, they're going nowhere. That's where they're going. Their relationship is shot unless one of them changes. Now, the mom in this scenario is probably right about what she's saying. I mean, the daughter's 14, right? I mean, the mom's probably right. But guess what? That girl is never going to hear it. Never. She's never going to hear it because of the way her mom's talking to her. The overbearing, I'm going to tell you how it is. I mean, like when you're 14, you want somebody telling you how it is. I mean, no, you don't. You don't want that at all. So what do we do about it? We have to identify with each other, first of all. If you're a parent or a grandparent or a teacher, you've got to identify with your kids. And I'm not talking about like fake homie slang and stuff like that, like throwing down gang symbols. I'm just saying, remember what it's like to be a teenager. That's what I'm talking about. And if you're a teenager, try your best to think about where the adults in your life are coming from. Just try to identify with. Have you ever thought about what it would be like to have to be a parent of you? Have you ever thought of that? Think about that. Just try to put yourself in the other person's place. And parents, we should understand where teenagers are because guess what? We were teenagers also. I mean, when you were a teenager, I don't care how old you are right now, when you were a teenager, did you ever talk back to your parents? I mean, you might have got slapped across the floor after you did, but, you probably tried it. I had that personal experience. I mean, did you ever just think your parents were nuts? I mean, did you ever just want to do what you wanted to do without a good reason? Did you ever really not understand consequences of your choices? Did you ever not care about consequences of your choices? I mean, have you ever just had a compulsion to try bad stuff? I mean, really, ever? I mean, yeah, if you grew up, you did. If you ever said, I don't know. I mean, really? I mean, yeah, we finished the statement. Rules were made to, how do you know that? How do you know that statement? We all were there, and when it comes to parent-teen relationships, there's no better place for the golden rule than here. Luke 6:31, Jesus said this, and we call it the golden rule today. Say this out loud together. Read it from the screen. Do to others as you would like them to do to you. All right, let's do it again. Do to others as you would like them to do to you. So, ask yourself the question, how would I like to be talked to? How would I like to be talked to? How would I like to be treated? I mean, this is complicated stuff, guys. I mean, I don't know if we can handle this. Do you want to be talked to like you're 4 years old? And neither does your teenager. And teenagers, neither do your parents. Sometimes teenagers want to be treated like an adult, and sometimes teenagers want to be treated like children because of this phenomenon of adolescence. Now, I don't know. I was not alive before 1941. But I can imagine before society changed that children were children and then you became an adult. I'd imagine a lot of this stuff wasn't in play, but it is today. And so we're in that in-between stage of physically, sexually, mentally, we're becoming adults, yet in a lot of ways society will not allow us to have responsibility of adults, so therefore we don't have the expectations on us that we should if we're adults. So it creates this complicated scenario because sometimes as a teenager, I wanted to make my own decisions. Didn't you? Yeah, but sometimes as a teenager, when it was one of those big decisions where there was a lot of responsibility, I didn't want to make that decision. If I was honest about it, I wanted somebody to help me. I wanted somebody to make that decision for me. The hard part about parenting is you have to guess which time it is. Is this the time Susie wants me to tell her what to do? Or is this the time Susie wants to make her own decision? And because whatever you choose is probably wrong. I mean, you know how that goes. But it's the unwritten rule that parents have to guess that. But the bottom line is this. If we apply the golden rule and we think about respecting the other person as a human being, we can go a long way. Because you have to make the transition from thinking about your kid as a child and you have to start thinking about your kid as an adult. So don't talk down to them, and teenagers, don't talk down to your parents. Nothing ticks your parents off more than you talking like that. And so they're going to react. It's going to happen. So respect. Kids respond to expectations we put on them. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like this. If you expect your kid to do jack squat, what's your kid going to do? Jack squat. That's what they're going to do. If you expect your kid to be responsible, then a lot of times your kid will respond to the expectation. But you've got to respect them in order for that to happen. You've got to listen to them, really engage. Now, look, I'm a parent. I know this is hard. I know it is. But we've got to listen to them. We've got to hear where it's another adult. You don't talk to another adult like, I'm just going to like shut you up now and tell you what to do. Because you don't have a relationship. If you want a relationship with your teenager, you've got to be able to listen to them. In the video, this mom had so much work to do. I mean, I don't even know where to tell her to start. I mean, it's so bad because she's not listening to her daughter. She's not listening at all. And she's not communicating in a way that her daughter can understand. And we all commiserate with that. So here's some stuff that's going on developmentally with teenagers. Now, this is the fun stuff that teenagers never like to talk about, but it's true. You know, like you go into, is it still 5th grade where they have the talk? Is it still the fifth grade health class? Somebody tell me. Is it? Yes? Yes? You walk in there and you see the pictures and you're like, oh, that's me, dude. Yeah, y'all don't get it, do you? I mean, it's anatomy, health. They start, it's all this weird stuff. But there's all these developmental issues going on, physically, developmentally. Puberty's going on. And we're, oh, man, is he going to talk about that? That's just so weird and awkward. Hormones are going wild. It just is. And I'm not just talking about sex. I'm talking about all the emotions. Hormones going wild. I mean, it's like crazy. I mean, like 1 minute you're my sweet little angel kid, and the next minute, you give me my kid back. You know, I mean, it's like a demon came out, and you're sitting there and everything's fine. All of a sudden, everything's terrible. And you're like, what happened? Nothing happened. Hormones happened. I mean, and sometimes we just need to cut kids some slack because they're not in control of that. Now, what we do need to do is teach them how to respond when that happens, because it is going to happen. But mentally, this is an interesting thing. Mentally, we change. Physically, our brains change when we hit puberty. The cognitive development thing starts going on, and all of a sudden, now the child has the ability to think in ways they did not have the ability to think before. And oftentimes, we as parents confuse this with rebellion, and it's just that the thought never occurred to them before that they could challenge what you said. And so they're going, well, she said that, but what if that's not right? And before they're just going, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. And now all of a sudden they go, oh, I can think differently. Now, you're not sitting there when you're 10, 11, 12, 13 going, wow, my cognitive development has kicked in, and now I can process like an adult. You're not thinking like that, but that's what's going on developmentally. And spiritually, all this affects spiritual development. Stephen was talking about, that a little bit up here, because your faith has to become your own. When you're little, you kind of just believe whatever your parents tell you. You kind of do. And then all of a sudden you're a teenager and you're like, well, what if God's not real? Well, why doesn't He answer my prayers? Why is there all this sucky stuff in the world? I mean, why doesn't God? You start thinking like that, and you have to personalize your faith. And then there's cultural issues. Let me tell you something. You hated it, they hated it. Do never say, when I was a kid. Now, I mean, I've been guilty of that sometimes. I slip into that, but you hated it, they hate it too. But let me tell you something. This is not the world you grew up in. It is not. It is absolutely not the world you grew up in. Look, like I said earlier, I'm a product of the 80s. I said I was born in the 80s. I meant I'm a product of the 80s. And look, we didn't even have personal computers, much less the internet. And everything is accessible now. Everything is accessible. I mean, when I was a kid, if you wanted to find pornography, you had to find a magazine somebody threw out a car window in a ditch somewhere. And now it's just click, click. I mean, it's just everywhere. Media has eliminated every taboo there ever was. I mean, there are no more taboos. They're all gone because everything is out there. Everything is accessible. Kids today have absolutely no idea what it's like not to have the internet. They have no idea. Google has changed everything. Everything is different. Man, I wish we had Google when I was in school. I mean, we had to go to the library. And when Stephen was visiting colleges, we go to these college campuses, and there's these giant libraries, and I'm going, why do they still have these? And they were like, ha, 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 yeah, you're right. Why do we still have this? Because nobody needs the library anymore. It's all on the internet. Smartphones have changed everything about how we operate, about how we communicate. I was getting new phones just a couple of weeks ago for my family. Our 2-year plan ran out and all the phones were dying. And so we go to get new phones. And if you're going to get on any kind of a family plan, you pretty much have to get a smartphone now. Your options are pretty much cheap smartphone, expensive smartphone. There's no such thing. You can go to the Go phones. And so my 14-year-old, I'm like, well, you know what? Guess what? We're going to get a smartphone. Now, we didn't just say, okay, we're going to get a smartphone. Here, good luck with that. I have a responsibility as a parent to protect my kid, but there comes a time when it's my responsibility as a parent to go, this is the world you live in. Now let me teach you how to navigate it. So, as an example, the cell phone does not go in the room at night for my 14-year-old. The cell phone stays outside of the room. It charges out in the family area. Nobody's going to be texting her after she's gone to bed. We don't allow computers and TVs in our kids' bedrooms because it just creates too much temptation because everything is accessible. All those things are in public areas. So it's my job as a parent to teach them how to navigate. If I don't teach my 14-year-old how to do this, what's going to happen? She's going to figure it out on her own. And it may not be the right thing, and it may not be the right way. So, what do we need to do a better job at parenting? Ephesians 6, 1 through 3. You parents, you're going to love this right here. You're going to love this, man. This is good stuff right here. Teach your kids to memorize this. Children, obey your parents. Now, you don't even have to read the rest of it. Just that right there. That's just good stuff. Children, obey your parents. No, really. Because you belong to the Lord. For this is the right thing to do. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise. If you honor your father and mother, things will go well for you, and you'll have a long life on earth. So if you don't want things to go well for you, and you want to have a short life, then don't obey your parents. And some of the parents are going, yeah, because I'm about to take your life right now. And that's how it's going to go down. And parents be like, I love this verse right here. But oftentimes what we parents don't do is we don't read the next verse. Parents, do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. So there is ultimately a responsibility for parents that we have to learn how to love our teenagers. Now, a lot of this has to do with your outlook and your attitude as you're approaching the teen years. If you're like, oh, dear God, I hate this kid. I hate my life. How do you think your kid's going to feel? Really. I'm the, oh, dear God, I hate my life kid. That's what they're going to think. But what if you had the approach of, God, I don't understand everything's about to happen, but this is an adventure, and we get to do it together. And we're going to figure this out together. And what we've got to do is we've got to look at life like that as an adventure that we're going to go move forward with. Now, I just feel like it's time we have some more instructional video from Tim Hawkins. What do you think? Let's watch this.
I just started communicating with music to my kids. They don't listen to me talking anymore. I just use their songs and get my point across. We're at the mall the other day. They're just begging me for an iPhone for an hour. I finally said, dude, I'm not gonna buy you an iPhone, 'cause you ask for it like you need one. You don't. I'm not gonna buy you an iPhone. You're insane if you think I'll pay for it, so be on your way. I'm not gonna listen. Go away. You're wasting all your time. Here's a dime if you find a payphone, but no iPhone today. And that's what I did.
We were talking about like had all the face piercings and the baggy pants and stuff, which I love. I love baggy pants because I got a friend that's a police officer, and he can catch gang members so much quicker now because, they can't run from the cops. Their belt is here. They're like, it's the cops. Hurry, waddle, waddle. I keep waiting for them to just hide in their pants. Oh, it's the cops!
Don't text and drive. It's dangerous. Don't text. Because when I was growing up, I took driver's ed, and nobody ever had the teacher never stood up in the front of the class and said, "Now, John, boys and girls, after you get your driver's license, don't drive and type." Look at the kids around the room going, "Why is he doing this to his cell phone?"
How about Beyonce? Open minds, California, open minds. She'll have kids, she'll be like, to the left, to the left. To the left, to the left. Everything you own in a box to the left. You must not know about me. You must not know about me. I can make another you in a minute. Did you roll your eyes at me? No, you didn't.
Oh, I think I need a minute. Oh, man. Well, I think this is one of the most helpful things we can do is just laugh about some of this stuff. Oh. But like we've been saying, one of the best ways you can express love to your kids is TIME, spend time with them. And the same is true for the teenage years. But it's just weird. It's like Stephen was saying when I stood the whole girlfriend thing when he was 6. It's just weird if you haven't been talking about that stuff, and then all of a sudden there you are wanting to spend time with your kid. You need to be spending time with your kid all along, but you're going, well, okay, well, here I am now. My kid's 12, my kid's 14, my kid's 20, and I want to start spending time with them. This is what you do. You call them up, or you text them, or you talk to them, and you go, look, I need to apologize. I haven't been the kind of parent I need to be. I haven't been spending time with you, and I'd like to try to start. Can we try to start? That's how you do that. You say, I'm sorry, and you call it out, and you just say what it is, and you try to start, and you work from this day moving forward. And kids, give your parents some slack. Cut them some slack, man. They're trying. They really are. Look, when it comes to this whole thing about rules in the house, I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about this. And we've got a slide for this because this is something true that every one of you know, that you know this is true. Relationships minus rules equals chaos. Now, leave that up there. I want to talk about this just for a second. Rules need to be about relationships. Now, you think about this. Every relationship has rules. We don't go around thinking about it, but it's true. If you're dating a girl, there's a rule about texting other girls. If you're sending other girls more texts than you're sending your girlfriend, there's going to be a problem. There's a rule about that. You know what I'm saying? Now, these rules aren't necessarily written down, but there's rules about relationships. And when you're in a home situation and you're dealing with your kids, make sure you frame your rules around things that are going to help relationships, not rules for the sake of rules. Don't create rules just because those rules were created for you. They probably didn't work anyway. Why are you doing that to your kids? So, very important. Relationships minus rules equals chaos, because if you don't have some rules for the relationships, the kids are going to be raising the parents. And that's what's wrong in our culture today. But on the flip side of that, rules minus the relationship equals rebellion. Now, some of you are the product of that, and you know that. That's why you don't have rules in your house, is because there were so many rules for you that you just rebelled, and you at least understood that. But the right answer is you got to get some balance in all this, because if you just have rules for the sake of rules, just because I say so, every kid's going to rebel against that at some point in time. They're going to rebel against it at home, or they can't wait till they get out of your house to do it, but they're going to rebel against it. So when you're raising your kids, you got to realize what you need is you need guardrails. like this guardrail that's sitting up here on the stage. It's been here. We've been making reference to it for the past several weeks. You need guardrails. And I like even better than the guardrails, you know, you're driving down the interstate. I was doing this the other day, and I got my wheels aligned on my car. And so I'm driving down the interstate, and I'm letting go of the steering wheel, not in heavy traffic. And I'm easing off the steering wheel to see if it's going to drift because I got my wheels aligned, and I want it to go straight when I let go of the steering wheel. And so the van veers off, and it starts getting over here on that solid white line, and they have all those little reflector things that going down through there. You know what I'm talking about? And you're going down through there, and all of a sudden, y'all know what I'm talking about? Well, what are those little bumpy things there for? They're there to wake you up to get your attention, because if you fall asleep at the wheel, or you're texting while you're driving, and you're talking on the phone and not paying attention, and you hit those little things, they're going to jolt you to your attention so you can calmly veer back into the center of the lane and not overreact and hit the guy next to you. But those little bumpy things are there to get your attention. And that's really what the rules are like in our house. That's what they should be like. They should be there to make sure we stay in the right relational lanes. Now, ultimately, I think, I was up here just a minute ago with Stephen, and we were talking about advice. You got to think in terms of relationship, but you also have to think in terms of purpose as parenting. And this is going to be the final thing I say today. As a parent, and if you didn't do this well, again, you can start today. You have to think in terms of purpose. What do I want? What is the end goal of my parenting? If the end goal of your parenting is behavior modification, then have a bunch of strict rules and enforce those. If that's all you want is behavior modification. But if your end goal is character, if your end goal is a person who loves God and loves people, then you need to approach the whole thing differently. Look, this is what's important. You can't change your kid's heart. You cannot change their heart. Only God does that. Only God changes hearts. If the rules are just there to modify behavior, it's not going to create a heart change. It's going to create an external behavioral change. As a parent, what we've got to do, and as grandparents and as society, we've got to create environments that gives God room to operate to change hearts. An environment of forgiveness, an environment of grace. Yes, there's rules, but the rules have purposes. There's a why to them. And we have to think in terms of gradually letting them go. Gradually letting them go. Like Stephen was saying, it's like this. When my kids are young teenagers, it's like, okay, now you want to go see this movie. You want to go see this movie. Now, when they were a kid, what would I say? I would say yes or no. I'd say yes or no. I would say yes or no based on what's in the movie. And I would go to Plugged In Online or it's escaping me. The other one I go to all the time. Help me. Common Sense Media. Thank you. Common Sense Media. And we go, what's in the movie? What's in the movie? My kid's a young teenager, and I'm going, okay, this is what is in the movie. There's a lot of violence in this movie. There's a lot of language in this movie. Is this something you want to see? And let them make the choice. But also with the caveat that if you keep making choices like this and you choose to go see a movie that's full of this kind of stuff, is this what you want to become? Because this is what is influencing you. And let them make the choices, but putting it out there, demonstrating what the consequences are, staying out late. By the time Stephen was a senior in high school, there was no curfew. There was no, we were done with that. All we asked for was respect when you come and go. But, we're not setting a curfew for you. We're not telling you where to go and all that kind of thing. But before he got to that point, it was, he had a curfew, and he would call and say, hey, can I stay out late? And I'm like, well, it's a school night. He goes, yeah, I know. And I'm like, well, you're the one that has to get up and go to school tomorrow. You tell me. So I wasn't making those choices for him anymore. It was guiding him and directing and letting those things get more freedom as they got older. So, in conclusion, for real, this is what I want to say to you. Do not go home and inflict a bunch of new rules on your kids. They're going to hate church if you do that. I went to church today and the pastor dude said, don't do that. Start dialoguing. Start engaging them in conversation. Better yet, start engaging other people in conversation that can help you dialogue your kids in conversation. Stacy and the people that are back here with Quest, they're great for that. That's what they're there for. They want to talk with you as a parent. Look, they're talking to each other. They ain't got it figured out either. Neither do I. Small groups. Look, because all this stuff is real time, and I've been saying this every week, but you're sitting there and you're in the middle of a decision you have to make. You're in the middle of a crisis. You need to be able to pick up your phone and send a text or make a phone call and go, I need real-time advice right now. You don't have time to go consult the manual and figure it out. You need to be able to talk to people. Now, the biggest challenge to me, for us as adults, is we need to take seriously the responsibility to pray for the younger generation. And that's how I want to wrap it up today. In the book of Judges, Samson. You guys know the story of Samson? Do you know the story of Samson? Really strong guy. He took this special vow. And I challenge you to read this later, Judges 13. Samson's father prayed to God, teach us how to raise this boy. So they have this kid, and Samson's dad is praying, teach us how to raise this boy. Now, I'm not going to read it all now, but if you go read that later, this is what you'll find. God answers Samuel's father by sending an angel, a messenger. And this angel spends some time talking to Samson's father, not about the boy. He spends time talking to Samson's father about how he, as a father, should behave. And that's my final challenge to you guys, is whenever I pray for my kids, whenever you pray for your kids, whenever you pray for kids in general, I always end up praying for myself. I always turn it back on me because I start to realize, God, you're the one that can change them. I don't change them. What I need you to do is I need you to change me. It's easy to tell you what to do. It's hard to become what I need to become so that I can model for you the right thing. Let's pray. Well, if you've been coming here for this series, or maybe even today is your first time here, you realize, oh God, I need help. I mean, this is just, I feel you. But the cool thing about God is that you can come to Him wherever you are, whenever it is, and He will hear you, and He will answer you. So God, right now, what I want to do is I just want to pray first for the teenagers in the room. God, I pray that you would help them to find you, to find their own faith, to find what it means to have a relationship with you. And I pray that you would help them have better relationships with their parental units. And God, I want to pray for parents of teenagers specifically. God, I pray that you would give them wisdom beyond humanity, because God, that's what it takes. We need your wisdom. And I thank you that you say that if we ask you for it, you will liberally give it to us. So we're asking for wisdom because we don't know what to do so much of the time. And finally, I want to pray just for everybody else here who is an adult. And God, we all have a responsibility to influence the younger generation. And God, just to be honest, sometimes we don't know what to do. We see kids that seem like they're off the path of righteousness, and it's just so easy to criticize that. And God, maybe when we see kids off the right path, maybe what we need to do is just stop and pray for them instead of criticizing them. So God, give us eyes to see things the way that you see things. Give us the heart and the compassion, because so much of the time the kids, they don't feel love. They just hear rules, and God, we need to learn how to. And I thank you for all the people in the trenches. I thank you for the parents and the grandparents and the aunts and the uncles and the foster parents, the people that are in the trenches doing the work of investing in the younger generation, because they're our real heroes. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.